Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Pretty Passionate Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ruth, and I'm excited this week to pivot. We're switching gears, but before we get into that, getting some business out of the way, I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching, however you're consuming this content, and also for liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the podcast with your friends, your family, your coworkers, whoever you think might actually be interested in this little group chat we're having. Here at the Pretty Passionate Podcast, we dive deep into the things that we are passionate about. And I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. On that note, I also want to thank you so much for the ridiculously fun time that I've been having in the comments on YouTube. You guys are dropping such amazing, not only like knowledge pearls, book recommendations, like movie recommendations. We're having discussions about the topic of the show, and just hearing your thoughts in that way is so much fun. Also, feel free to send us an email with your thoughts at prettyprescription17@gmail.com. That's pretty, P-R-E-T-T-Y, prescription, P-R-E-S-C-R-I-P-T-I-O-N, 17@gmail.com. And I will do my best to answer all of your messages. Which brings me to my next topic. Phew, what a week it's been, y'all. I didn't think I was going to survive last week. It was a whirlwind. It was nonstop. And I know I say that probably a lot in my life because that's just the way my life is set up. But some weeks are much more challenging than others. I'm just going to give myself my own flowers that I even am managing to sit still and get this episode recorded, because that's how committed I am to the podcast and to our little family that we have built here, that we talk about all these things and have so much fun together. I really would not want to let y'all down. That said, I'm running on fumes. I had surgery 4 times last week. Not me personally having surgery. I performed surgery 4 times last week. Sometimes when I say it that way, people get concerned. So don't worry, I'm well. And so are the people I operated on, thankfully. And also we attended, or we had a meet and greet table at a women's conference that my church was hosting. And this is like a massive conference, like probably a couple thousand women. So it was a great opportunity to come out and meet some folks. Also to support the endeavor that my church is putting on. So that was 3 nights last week. So I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. My daughter thankfully went to school today. Earlier this week, she was out Monday and Tuesday with some elementary school ick that somehow she's already managed to catch. And all I had to do was of course, nurture her and love her, but also pray that I wasn't going to get what she got, because, us mamas, we're too busy to actually be the sick ones. Heaven forbid, when they're coughing and sneezing all over me, I'm going to wipe up their noses and everything. But here I go with the hand sanitizer and the hand washing, because I don't have time to be sick. No one really has time to be sick, but I felt that statement in my spirit, so I had to say it. Have you ever gotten sick from a little person or a toddler? I don't know what their germs are doing. They're in there getting strong from fighting, I guess a younger, weaker immune system. They're beefing up. So by the time they get to you, I don't know. But the last time I caught something from my daughter, thankfully, thus far, nothing. She's back at school and all is well. My son is still trying to quit school every single morning, but we're still getting him there. So thank you for your prayers. So on to the topic at hand. Now that we are in the Gilded Age hangover is what I call it, I'm filling in my entertainment space in my brain with a couple of goodies that we will talk about today. I'm going to hopefully we have enough time to get to everything, because I am mindful that some of our little chats run well over an hour prior to editing, and then I'm often able to edit them down to or just above an hour. But for the sake of brevity, I will give you guys a spoiler alert, because my best friend told me that I didn't give one on an episode and I ruined it for her, even though she's not watching The Gilded Age yet. Hopefully she does. But shout out to her, and spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about 2 topics: Love is Blind UK Season 2 and Netflix's limited series Sirens. Okay, so if you have not watched either of those, we're covering episodes 1 and 2 of Sirens, and we are covering episodes 1 through 3 of Love is Blind UK season 2. If you've not seen those, goodbye. Go watch them and come back and we'll talk. Okay. Now that y'all are gone. Okay, Love is Blind UK. I don't know who put me onto it because I watched the United States series just like everybody else during the pandemic. It had me in a chokehold. And since then, it's kind of been like one of those hard habits to shake where you're just like, oh, okay, I know it's not going to be as thrilling and as like lovely as that first season was. Like Lauren and Cameron were. They like had our hearts in a kung fu grip. But I still was like, okay, I'll check it out based on a recommendation. And I have to say, I'm enjoying it more than I have enjoyed recent seasons of the United States version. And I'll tell you why. Okay, first of all, obviously, the accents. I'm obsessed. I enjoy hearing these people speak in such a casual way so much. And it occurred to me, like, I think most of the time that I hear a British person speaking, it's not in a casual, like, friendly, casual way. It's more in a professional capacity, either visiting professors or something like that, or it's in a scripted situation in a show like Bridgerton. Okay. We got some Black British people. We've got some Black Scots up in there. TikTok has been a buzz with Black Scottish people. And I don't know if this show tipped people on to the fact that Black Scots exist, but I'm with the fans on TikTok. They're adorable. I mean, no offense to Black Brits, but the accents that the Scottish people, the Black Scots are rocking. I mean, I like a Scottish accent in general, but something about that accent combined with it being a melanated human is so fascinating. Like, mm-hmm. I guess I might feel that way about a Black person with a Russian accent and maybe a German accent as well. So if you guys are out there, hi, we're being listened to in, I think it's 11 countries now. So maybe I've reached one of the Black Germans that I have not seen or met. So if you are a listener, let me know. Also, one of the points that's very interesting in comparison to the United States version is that they just only cast gorgeous people on the show. Like there's no one on there who I would consider at or below average. And obviously beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I'm just really, judging by pretty strict standards of beauty of what most people find attractive, be it body type, facial features, facial balance. One of the things human beings find really attractive is like facial symmetry. So there's a lot of symmetric and in shape, good looking people on this show. And it always begs the question for me then, are we kind of subverting the experiment when we cast such a gorgeous cast? Not to be funny, but if we're really testing the blindness of love, should there not be some people on the cast that are below average attractiveness? I don't use the U word. I think it's not a kind word, but there's a spectrum when it comes to beauty, and obviously beauty is very subjective. So one man's unattractive is another man's queen. I get that. But, it begs the question. They have one curvier, she's not even full figured. There's one girl that I saw featured in the cast that is like a little bit curvier than the other teeny tiny women on the show, but it's a question I have. Last thing that I think comparison wise, it works better for me than the US version at this point. Maybe not season 1 or 2, but definitely at this point, it works better for me than the US because these people don't seem to be primarily focused on getting famous and being influencers. Do y'all remember that one season? I don't know if it was like season 3 or 4, or maybe even 5. Like, how many seasons deep are we? Either way, there was a season where you'll know if you watch the show in the US side. There was a guy, I believe he was an Asian gentleman, who was going so hard in the pods, and it was like pretty believable. And at some point, I guess he was not able to match up with someone, and he was giving a confessional, acting like he was so heartbroken. And at some point, and the producers are a mess for this, but I love them for it, he busts out some eye drops and pretends to be crying. He's like, is it okay if I do this? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. Like, sure, giving him rope to hang himself. Anyway, I don't know where that loser is, but yeah, I mean, there's people who come on the show. He's probably one of the most egregious examples, but there's clearly people who come on the US version in the hopes of gaining notoriety or fame or maybe a little bit of both. And I just didn't get that vibe off of the people who are sitting in the couches in the pods on the UK version. I mean, I'm not going to go through beat by beat because there's a lot of meat on the bone there and it's very interesting. But if you're familiar, if you're familiar with Love Is Blind, there's also like a lot of dreamy chit chat about the love of my life and how I envision in our dog and picket fence and all that, so I'm going to spare you that part. We're going to get right to, that's why I went through episode 3. We're going to right to where they pair off for real. We end up with 5 couples that head off to, that second location where they're going to get to know each other. And I'm just going to go couple by couple. Actually, before we get to the successful couples, though, let's talk about Patrick and Anu. Patrick and his blessed spleen. I don't know what to say about these two, except I'm glad they split when they did, because what? I don't know. I mean, love can be blind, but love shouldn't be weird and stupid. Like, if somebody is sitting across from me and they're telling me that they're not sure how they feel about me because their spleen is silent, I'm sorry to those of you who might find this offensive and think very strongly in accordance with your spleen. But as a person, a woman of science, as I am, y'all knew I was going to have a problem with this. Like, I don't know why you knew I was going to have an issue with this. Because first of all, the spleen it's such a strange place to attribute your feelings, right? Like, it's not your brain. It's not even your heart, where people have traditionally put those things. Or to say that you have a gut feeling about something. The spleen is just like a place where our bodies filter our blood, store some white blood cells. We remove some retired red blood cells, reservoir, blood and platelets. It has a role, but it also has enough redundancy that if you rupture your spleen, nobody's repairing spleens out here. We just take that bad boy out. So it's not as useless as your appendix, but it's not a vital organ. I can't just remove your heart and hope you make it. So that just goes to show you that in the hierarchy of organs, the spleen is not at the top. But the last I checked, for clarity, how we feel about things is really, really well studied and focused on our brains, and more in particular, the limbic system of our brains. I know we say things like my gut feeling, and that is valid but the emotions you're feeling, what happens is they can be so intense that you begin to feel symptoms that are referred to your GI tract, like butterflies in your stomach when you see your beloved. Those things are still generated in our brain. So for all the splenic believers out there, I apologize that I'm not sorry, that I think it's a weird thing to be driven in your life entirely by how your spleen feels, an organ that you don't feel in the same way that you feel like your intestines moving around. So, and also with Anu, what is with a singer who finds herself on an international platform like this? And she's given many like alley-oops. He gave her a lot of like easy alley-oops for her to kind of in a non-narcissistic way showcase her talents. And she's just like, no. I was like, do you like him? Then she goes to write him a song. It's too little too late. He doesn't want to hear it. They break up. So good for them. So once that mess is over and the spleen has spoken, we get to move on to the couples that have paired off. Okay. So we have Jevin and Katisha. We have Kieran and Megan, and we have Cal and Sarova, Ashley and Billy, and then Jed and Barda. Okay, so each couple, I'm going to just go through quick my thoughts. Yeah, if you'll bear with me. Javin and Katisha. Katisha's the Black Scott, by the way. Cute little accent. Has a little musicality to it. Anyway, she confuses me. She seems like she's a good, kind heart, and she seems like maybe she's had some tough relationships that have made her maybe uncomfortable, I guess, or not trusting of the amount of emotion that Demela was showing her. I mean, here this man is pouring out his heart. They have forged a connection beyond him just showering her with love. And he's being very forthcoming with how he feels and pouring into her, showing her, giving her gifts and everything like that. And her response to that is to recoil. And I was like, girl, this is probably how you've been moving in real life. And at some point, she actually said that Jevin was more like a type. She could tell just through the glass. He's more like a type that she would date in real life, personality-wise. And so I was like, isn't that a clue then that you should give someone else a chance? I don't know. it obviously hasn't been working out with those guys. So here you have someone who you do have a connection with, who also moves totally different than all the men you've been dating in the past. That has not worked out. I feel like you talked yourself out of probably getting with a guy who would have tried to make you happy. But, whatever. I feel like she was rating his swagometer through the glass. Like, she was like, Javin has more swag, and that made the decision for her. And then everything else was her talking herself into what she'd already decided, like, several dates ago between them. She's doubling down on her decision. It's obvious she has doubts. I appreciate Cal for kind of just being a real one and being like, can I chat with you for a second? Like, what happened? Like, how did you do that 180 on Demola? But on to Kieran and Megan. Okay. They're so cute. I love the name Kieran for boys. It's such a cool name. Their reveal chemistry was off the charts. Amazing. I really love to, I'm always like super studying them when they're at the reveal. And I kind of like wish we could just fast forward to those moments, because sometimes you can see in the reveal, like, it's off. She doesn't like him. He doesn't like her. And it's like, you get that secondhand embarrassment where like one keeps going in for the hug and kiss and the other one is like, but in their case, there was a lot of chemistry in the reveal. So they're cute. I'm rooting for them. Interesting. I'm wondering about what happens when he meets that girl who stormed off when she realized she wasn't his first and only choice, really, because that's what she stormed off for. What's her name? Amy? Forgive me. I don't recall. But it felt like Amy, let's call her Amy, she was like a living, breathing hot girl trope. She's like, I don't have to put any effort. I'm beautiful. I show up and the things happen. The men fall all over themselves to prove themselves worthy of my attention. And congratulations to her on that. It doesn't seem to be working to get the kind of relationship she wants, but because that didn't seem to work here, she's like, I'm nobody's second best. All right, girl. Like, all he did was ask you to go a little deeper and just reveal some of yourself so he could know who he was talking to. But I digress. But I am interested to see their reunion, to see what happens when they all get together at some party or bar later on. Okay, Cal and Sarova. What do you guys think? First of all, okay. This is not the first Asian couple that we've seen to just magically find each other somehow. Like, I think it was season 4 or something. I wondered, I was like, do they give them any ethnicity clues? Because just based on their accents and everything, the way that they suddenly started circling each other with greater and greater interest, only to later than it seems find out that he is half Pakistani and she is full-blooded Indian. And obviously that has its separate issues in terms of conflict for ethnic conflict. But I just found it interesting that they even found each other. I really would love to know more as far as the weeding process, the many dates they go on and how, is it her name? She said her name was completely uncommon. So if either of them was specifically looking for someone of a particular ethnic background. Interestingly, when they get together, the chemistry is decent. His eyes are striking. He's a handsome guy. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but he's cute. I wish he would do something different with his hair. Okay, I said it. I'm sorry. I don't love it. The hair is not doing it for me. I figure like, okay, you're half Pakistani, half British. You've got to have like some thick, luscious, gorgeous hair. I mean, why are we wearing it in this fashion? At some point when they get together in Cyprus, he tells her that she's not his usual type. And then later on in his confessionals, he tells us that one of the other girls, Barda, is actually his type. So I was like, okay, so you like a little comfy. I mean, like, I was like, okay, for honesty, good for you to say that, I guess, and be honest that she's not normally who he would be with, not because he's not attracted to her, but just circumstantially, I guess, where he grew up, who he's been around. But I could tell that was there's no woman on earth who the man is sitting in front of you and he says, I really like you. I really like you so much. It's crazy because you're not really my type. Bert? I feel like there's not a woman on earth who would not be like, so what does that mean? Okay. And then feel a little bit put off by that in some way. She handles it well. She didn't like clap back in any weird way. I don't know a single woman on earth who wants to hear that, even if it is the truth. Like, I'd rather hear like when you've made a decision, like, if that was a factor, maybe then you could be honest about that, but not right now. Of course. And then it gets stuck in her head and we see even the camera producers, y'all are so messy. Because as soon as they meet the other couples, Ashley, who is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, I guess fits the mold of his typical type. When Ashley and Cal are meeting each other and hugging, they pan right on in on Sorova's face. Like, they give no room for her to quietly, personally react to seeing him hug someone who fits his beauty type. So I know they meant to be messy by doing that, and I loved it. But she's holding it in. She's holding it in. Okay, on to Ashley and Billy. They were actually the first couple to get engaged, and I was surprised at how quickly they coupled off, and they were like, I've seen enough, I've heard enough. Off they went. They seem like they're a solid win, like, period. There's very little that I see that leads me to believe that they're not genuinely planning to get married. They also have that military background in common. I feel like there's a lot of grounding factors, and their chemistry during the reveal did not show any weaknesses that I could pick up on. I would be very shocked if they don't make it to the altar, but I always find these couples fascinating because, like, the last season of Love is Blind US, there was a couple exactly like this that I was like, oh, they're solid. They're going to make it to the altar. They're good. And they didn't. And I was like, well, what happened here? It didn't occur to me early on. So I'm very fascinated always to see who these solid couples, who also go around calling themselves the most solid couple, I'd like to see how they eventually unravel, you know? Jed and Bada, as he says it, Bada. See, I tried really hard not to use my terrible British accent. I knew it was going to definitely slip out of my face at some point. So there, with Bada, you know, a little British, not at all. Americans don't do British accents well at all. So Jed and Barda, I love that they both have these deep ethnic roots. He's half Lebanese. He talks about Sunday roast, I think. Sunday that his family, they all get together and it sounds like a big, like, loud, noisy, fun family situation. I come from a loud, noisy family that gets together like that. So I love that. I think this matters because even though obviously she's Albanian, so she's not Lebanese, but I still think that even though if the ethnicities aren't the same, she's going to understand a lot about his family dynamic without having to be informed explicitly. Also, his voice is so nice. I enjoyed their meeting. It was very sweet. Not as, like, passionate and red hot as some of the other couples, but I don't necessarily see that as a red flag. Also, how cool is it that they get to head to Cyprus for their meeting? Not that the US people get the short end of the stick, but we do stay on this side of the globe. And yeah, Cyprus is just stunning. So even just having an opportunity to visit Cyprus for an extended period of time is breathtaking. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So I would be interested to hear your thoughts on those folks. I don't see myself as someone who's going to cover a ton of reality TV, like, in depth as it goes on, but this Love is Blind is kind of different that way. And this particular version of Love is Blind, let me know your thoughts on Love is Blind UK. If you're not watching it, it's such an easy watch. I also enjoy shows like that where I can sort of have them on in the background while I'm doing other things. That's when I'll have this kind of thing on. For the most part, it's rare that I'm actually sitting down, like, bowl of popcorn in hand, like, complete attention to reality television, if that makes sense. If there are great reality shows that I happen to be missing out on, you know, let me know. Drop a comment. So some of you expressed interest in Sirens, Netflix's limited series. I just happened to start watching it recently, which is why it's on my radar. It was on my watch list for a minute and I didn't get around to it, mostly because other things. But I definitely think it's a show worth discussing and seeing if we like and if we want to continue. So I've seen episodes 1 and 2, and I have to say, I'm intrigued. I'm really eager to watch episodes 3. I tried very specifically not to spoil myself so I can cover it with you and not be jumping ahead. Yeah. So far, I'm really enjoying it. If you didn't catch my overall description of Sirens last week, it's a mini series or a limited series being on streaming on Netflix now. Is a story that borrows a lot of concepts from Greek mythology. So the show is categorized as a dark comedy, and it is based on the 2011 play LMNOP, created by Molly Smith Metzler. So it's set over basically a single weekend. So the 5 episodes of the show are taking place over a weekend at this luxurious, insane beachside estate. Each episode is about an hour runtime. And so again, they're spreading one weekend out over 5 episodes. So we'll talk about episodes one and 2. We are first introduced to the older DeWitt sister, Devin DeWitt, because she's being released from an overnight stint in jail in Buffalo. She goes home. It's clear that she's having like a rough time, you know? We don't know all of her charges, but it definitely looks like she spent some time in the drunk tank, whatever. Like, homegirl is not at a great phase in life right now. Her dad is, the house is in disarray. Okay. He's sitting on a couch. He's watching TV. It's kind of loud. And you could see that the house is not kept up properly, and maybe he's not altogether there. And then we get inferences that let us know that she is his caretaker. It's also on the way home from the police station. You see Devin repeatedly like sending a message on her phone. The message she's sending is to her sister Simone, and it's Sirens, but there's no response. And so she gets home, she finds her dad, and she also finds an edible arrangement on the doorstep waiting for her when she walks in the house. So she comes in and she's like, who's this from? She's talking to her dad, and he's not really with it, but she gathers that, oh, Simone sent me this edible arrangements. So she gets pissed. We don't 100% know why is she pissed. We just know she's been trying to get a hold of her sister. Her sister's not responding to her. Clearly, she knows where her sister is and I guess expects a response. And at some point, her sister sent her an edible arrangements. She decides that, you know what? I'm taking this and I'm bringing it back to her. So she takes it and gets on a bus. Kind of like a funny montage they take us through of her then getting on a ferry, and she has sex with one of the ferry workers, and then she gets off the ferry, tries to get a cab. The cab is $70, I think, to take her to this house, the Cliff House, which is this wealthy people's house that she knows her sister is working at for the summer. So since she can't afford the taxi, she's like taking the long walk to the Cliff House. And that's a funny montage as well, like her drinking from a sprinkler, et cetera, et cetera. Then we also get a perspective as Devin is on her way, basically looking like the hot mess express, to this wealthy house that is overlooking the ocean in some nondescript northeastern beach town. Simone is at this dreamy house. She is looking out over some water and, you know, she's canoodling in bed with a man named Ethan. And she gets the messages, but then she doesn't respond to them. And during their interaction, you learn that Simone's relationship with Ethan is something she doesn't want her employer to know about because he's friends with them. Thinking that this is just a fling, she's like, why would I blow that up and tell all my business? And so they leave it at that. She then, after she's done having sex that morning with Ethan, she rushes over to the estate, quickly gets ready, and presents herself before Michaela. And it's clear that she is Michaela, or Kiki, as she calls her, Kiki's personal assistant. But it's also clear that they have like a very tight relationship. Employer-employee, but clearly Michaela really depends on her for emotional support. At some point, she even sexts Kiki's husband for her, like takes a fake selfie, helping her like prop up her cleavage and everything. It's a very interesting relationship. But Michaela lets her know about setting this bird free, and she's got this nonprofit that focuses on wildlife, birds, recovering them, I guess birds of prey in particular, and setting them free, and it's such a success. Great. So Michaela's clearly one of those women figures that's married into a wealthy situation, and she's a smart woman. She's got a good head on her shoulders, and she's making the most of it and just living at the top of this empire. So her passion is helping birds, and so that's what she busies herself doing. You see staff kind of getting ready in the background for like an event. Then her sister arrives, and Devin is clearly in a panic about that, not interested in seeing her sister in this setting. And it's so crazy because you think about like in the Gilded Age, the sun and the sound of the ocean and just the pastels and fanciness of Newport. And that's exactly what we see here. It's a palatial home. And then they have guest houses and everything. And they're right on this cliff, which is why they get the term Cliff House. So in stark contrast to her surroundings, Devin is standing there looking like someone who spent her night in jail and her morning traipsing across the Northeast on a bus and a ferry and finally an arduous walk to get there. So Devin is really aggressive. She's throwing the fruit at her sister, and like, why didn't you answer the phone? Her sister's like trying to get her to disappear as quickly as she can, because obviously she doesn't want Kiki or any of the guests who are arriving for this event related to the birds to see her sister. At that moment, it's clear to me that she's hiding stuff. And I was like, I wondered how far she'd gone in terms of her lying, telling them, where she's from, who she's from. And in that way, I was like, we've got a little bit of a Mrs. Turner character here, who she just shows up in society and she's got her story and she's connected enough to a powerful person that kind of washes her past and makes it irrelevant, because if she's friends with this person, or in Ms. Turner's case, married to this person, it really doesn't need to be investigated further. So yeah, the way she was freaking out, I was like, okay, there's definitely a lot more to this than even meets the eye. Apparently, Devin had reached out to Simone to let her know that she needed her help caring for their father because he had just been diagnosed with early onset dementia. Simone thought that an appropriate response to learning this information was to send her sister an edible arrangements, which is wild, right? Like, there's definitely some depth here if that's your response to learning that your father is not well and that your sister, your only sister, is reaching out for help. I was like, is there a disconnect? Is she crazy? Devin also notices that Simone's aesthetic has changed. They had like a little sister tattoo on the wrist. She got removed because she said tattoos are trashy. She's had a rhinoplasty since, Devin is able to see that her nose is visibly different. And it's clear that Simone has worked really hard to get herself into this space. And she's very happy, or she's happy to be there. I don't know if she's very happy, but she's very happy to be there, and she does not want Devin ruining it for her. So she's trying to get her to wait in the guest house, just go away. And when they get there, Devin's trying to confide in her, like reach out to her and let her know, like, as her sister, like, I need you. And Simone is not interested. She has a blockage up when it comes to her family, and in particular her dad. And I'm sure we'll learn more about what that's about. And they're going back and forth arguing. Michaela walks in on them, and it's awkward as hell because apparently Kiki did not even know that Simone has a sister. They convince the sister, Devin, to just kind of stay invisible. That will allow them to go back to the house and greet all the guests who are arriving. So Devin then calls, she makes a call to a guy named Ray, who is her boss. It seems like it's like, a dead-end job situation, and he's like middle management. Sometimes she sleeps with him. And she basically uses that information to blackmail him into caring for her father, who has dementia, going and check on him and give him meds and everything. And he doesn't want to do it, but that threat seals the deal. So at least we know things are taken care of at home while she's up at the cliffs trying to get through to her sister. One thing that they're sure to point out to us is that the property is very like high tech in terms of security. There's cameras everywhere, which I don't find that shocking in the home of a billionaire that there's going to be cameras everywhere. You have to protect yourself from liability and, someone just randomly saying they slipped and fell down a flight of your stairs. Well, having cameras prevents people from taking advantage of you in that way. So I totally get it. She goes to smoke and the house AI is like, no smoking or whatever. It wasn't a parrot sound, but you get what I'm saying. So then she's like, okay, let me go out to the woods. But still, there's cameras even extending into the woods. And that's when she runs into Jose. Jose is he's like the house manager, and he tells her that there's no place on the property where she could smoke because smoking is simply not allowed. And then when she basically begs him, I need a cigarette or I'm going to die, he takes her to this little area that the staff all know there are no cameras. And that's when the veneer starts to crack a little bit, like what's going on here at the Cliff House. The staff is back there, they're eating carbs, which was hilarious because she was like, wait, are we not allowed to? No, they're not allowed to have carbs on the property because Kiki doesn't want them to have carbs. Carbs make her bloated. Carbs are not good for her. And so no one can have carbs, which is a little tyrannical, but also not shocking for the wife of a billionaire, right? That little meeting breaks up after Devin enjoys her cigarette. She goes back to the guest house, and that's where she runs into Ethan, of all people. And I was thinking to myself, knowing them for a very short time, I was like, oh, Simone's not going to like this. Because what happens in the first couple minutes of talking to him, Devin Loose Lips tells Ethan, oh yeah, first of all, she introduces herself as Simone's sister, which is her right to do. But at some point she just drops the knowledge that Simone was in foster care, which Ethan is surprised to learn. He's been sleeping with her all summer, but I guess he didn't really get to know the real Simone. It's clear that she's morphed into a different person and she's presenting a different version of herself, or a false version of herself to fit in here. So Devin goes into the event at the main house with Ethan, and obviously Simone is mortified to see them together. Michaela starts her event talking about, the earth. There's a lot of woo-woo in the whole thing. And they do this thing where they're like, hey, hey. And the whole group says, hey, hey. And it's I would not be able to keep a straight face in such an event. And that's probably why I don't attend things like that. Like, if we're raising money and it's a charity, fine. I brought my checkbook. I'm ready to contribute. But like, I'm not doing that with you. We're not doing that. Mm. So at that point, Devin rightly says, like, this is a cult. So she's freaking out because she's like, her sister is a part of a cult. And how is she going to get her out? And I understand that. I'm not a big sister. I'm the baby sister. But I feel like if I had a younger sibling and I walked into a situation where they were not themselves, not dressing the way they were, they had a nose job, removed their tattoos, like acting so Stepford. And now everybody's like standing around this woman talking about, hey, hey. And like, it's just not making a lot of sense. Like, what does hey, hey mean? I would definitely be like full on cult. Need to rescue my sister. So Devin's kind of low-key freaking out at this point. And that's when Ethan kind of drops it right in Simone's lap that like he knows now she was in foster care. I didn't love that because I was like, what does it matter, Ethan? And I guess his point is that he didn't know this about her and that's weird. Fair. But I just feel like that wasn't the venue to discuss that. Eventually, because Simone is uncomfortable, she and Kiki get together and they decide they're going to offer Devin a check to disappear. Right? Isn't that how rich people solve a lot of their problems? If you got money to burn, I wouldn't be opposed to it to make some problems permanently go away, or at least hope they're permanent. Of course, because it's a 5-episode series and we're only in episode 1, we know that Devin's not accepting this check to go anywhere. She gives her the check. They insist that she leave, and there's a little bit of a threat there where Kiki's kind of like, leave nicely or else. And so Jose puts a reluctant Devin into a car to take her to the inn, which Michaela, Kiki, has prepaid for. She doesn't really say anything. On the way to the inn, Jose has her sign an NDA, which is also not shocking, standard practice for if you hang out with people who are important, just to protect them from liability. But he is nice. He's not a jerk to her. And when he drops her off, she practically jumps on him, tries to kiss him. And he's freaked out. He's like, whoa, 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 I'm married. And I think we are seeing, obviously, that this is a pattern for Devin. We're not given yet information about what reactive attachment to strange men is, but there's got to be some trauma there. You don't go around immediately just sleeping with people who show you any kind of kindness unless there's some history. So I hope that the show does not gloss over that detail and just use it as like, oh, she's quirky and not clearly evidence that there's more to Devin's story than we're being told. And because Michaela's paying for the room, she gets herself a dress. She goes down to the hotel bar. She's like, oh, she's going to pay for it. Then I'm going to enjoy myself on her dime. She sits down next to a man who introduces himself as Jordan. And they end up having sex on his boat. After, they're actually talking and there's chemistry there, like real chemistry. He gives her a shirt to wear. She immediately recognizes it as a shirt that belongs to, or sweatshirt that belongs to her sister, Simone. So she starts freaking out. Like, why do you have Simone's shirt? I guess it's a unique enough shirt that it would definitely belong to Simone in this scenario. And that's when Jordan admits that his name is actually Morgan and he actually works for Ethan and this is Ethan's boat that he is the captain of. And so from that point, Devin is very honest with Jordan, with Morgan, and opens up to him about the fact that Simone, her little sister, has this habit of kind of running away from her past. I guess she's still concerned about her because she doesn't like what she's seen with this culty situation with these rich people and all these changes. And I guess deep down, she is not yet convinced that Simone is here of her own accord. With good reason. I think the show is set up to make us question this as well. Meanwhile, Ethan, he's moved on from the foster care thing. He just kind of couches his shock about that by saying he just wants to know the real Simone. He wants to get to know more about her. So apparently it's not a summer fling. I don't know. So she tells him that her mother died and she doesn't explain why she was in foster care, but she kind of brushes it off. Simone is clearly not trying to dive deep into her actual past. She's like right after Devin tells us she likes to move on from her past. We see a clear example of how she does that. During that interaction, we see that Michaela was expecting her husband to come home that night, Peter Kell, to come home that night, and he doesn't. So we know, okay, are they cluing us into some tension? And he hasn't responded to her sext. Remember, she sexted him and said something kind of provocative. So the fact that it's crickets and he hasn't shown up is causing her a lot of discomfort. And at least to me, in a marriage where there was no rockiness, that would not necessarily be a cause for concern unless you're concerned for his safety. So Kiki goes off to bed without Peter, and quickly thereafter, she's awakened by a very loud noise, and it is the bird, Barnaby, that she had released back into the wild, crashing in through her window. And obviously that's jarring and scary and terrible. But even more terrible is that Devin, maybe she heard the glass or she just happened to be looking through his telescope at the house. She sees Michaela holding Barnaby in bloody hands in the window. And it just looks really carnal and culty and scary, as if there was like an animal sacrifice or some kind of ritual happening. And naturally, we know she's freaking out. So that is like the end of episode 1. And we're going to head straight into recapping episode 2. So episode 2 begins with Devin having clearly decided that she's not going to wait till morning to find out what's going to happen to her sister. She gets a wetsuit from Jordan Morgan and swims. I guess she wanted him to drive her or take her in the boat to the shore, but it's too shallow or rocky at a certain point to bring the boat all the way in. So she takes that wetsuit, puts that on, and swims her way to shore. And then it's funny because Jose, who is the house manager, remember, he's kind of always, I guess, watching security cameras. He sees her land on the shore of the Cliff House. And so he's alerted right away to her presence. Okay. She does get to Simone's room, however, and she's trying to convince her to get out of there. Cause what she saw with Michaela Kiki with the bloody bird corpse. Simone's like, no, I mean, that's not convincing to her at all. She's like, I'm happy here and I'm not going back to Buffalo. So they're arguing back and forth. At some point, Michaela just shows up at Simone's door. I'm pretty sure Jose clued her in on what was going on. And she's just got a weird vibe. She's tired. Oh, it's been a long night. You heard what happened with Barnaby. Oh gosh. And she's giving off like super neediness with Simone in this situation. And it's a bit unprofessional, even the way that like, then she turns around, talk about unprofessional, like, oh, I'm so tired, and just hops in the bed. And it's clear that this is not the first time that has happened. And I'm like, are they about to spoon? Like, what's going on here? Then she directs Jose to pretty much get rid of Devin and take her to the guest house. But apparently that's a shorthand or some kind of code speak for take her to the jail, because that's where Jose takes Devin. He takes her to jail to be arrested and processed for trespassing. I guess Kiki has had enough of her just showing up at her door. Simone, back in her bedroom with Kiki in the bed, Kiki's kind of explaining to her that she was put off about learning about her sister just today. Like, she didn't know that Simone had a sister, which is weird. Simone explains to her in kind of a brush it under the rug way that her sister makes her sad. And it's clear that for Simone, her sister comes with Buffalo and her dad, and Buffalo and her dad make her sad. We don't know why. I hope we learn. Michaela then asks her, is there anything else that you're keeping from me? In a very pointed way that I think if Simone were older, she would understand that when someone asks you a question in that fashion, they probably actually know the true answer. They're just testing you. So unfortunately, Simone does not confess the thing that she's hiding actively, which is that she's dating Ethan. Ethan is Peter's friend, which is what makes that situation weird, because she is Kiki's employee. And yeah, they have their little sister bond, but obviously it could get a little weird for Kiki, for her employee to suddenly be across from her at every gathering and dinner because Ethan and Peter are friends. So that's why they haven't told her, but she chooses not to say anything in that moment. Meanwhile, with Devin down at the police station, she's like trying to explain about the dead bird and the bloodiness. And the cops are like, the police officer who's booking her is like, girl, please, Kiki's a saint. Apparently Kiki helped her get money for treatment for a family member or something. So she's definitely not going to get anywhere trying to like convince the police to look into her in any way. And at this point, for me, Devin is becoming a little unrealistic. I'm entertained. I'm enjoying the way the show is going so far, but it does strike me that, like, she's not being careful at all. She's just, like, now blurting to the police. You don't know if the police are on the up and up. You don't know if they're corrupt. I mean, this guy's a billionaire, Peter Kell and Michaela Kell. They're billionaires. You don't know if they're on the take, and maybe they use the police to aggressively get rid of troublemakers. So I just find it strange that. And then she goes into her cell and she's talking to her cellmate about the Kells and about the situation with Simone. And I was just like, at some point, I don't know if it's naive or reckless. I guess reckless would be the better word of her to think that you can just talk about these people with impunity in their community. So the next day we see Peter Kell come home and he has a different vibe. He's talking to the chef, Patrice, and he's like asking her about her family. And you could see that rather than just turning down her smoothies in a cold fashion like Kiki does, Peter actually knows these staff members. Back in jail, Devin is getting some tea from her cellmate about Peter Kell, who apparently Michaela, Kiki, is not his first wife, that he has children from a previous marriage to a woman named Jocelyn, who mysteriously has disappeared. He has no relationship with those kids, and the cellmate believes that that relationship was destroyed by Michaela. So there's a picture being painted at this point of Michaela. Is she a villain? Is she a cult leader? Is she a murderer? It's very clear that they're setting us up to at least suspect foul play on Michaela's part and a little bit be guilty until proven innocent from this point. And also, interestingly, she tells her about how her dad infiltrated a cult that she was once a part of in order to get her out. So that gives Devin an idea. So you know at that point, like, okay, she's going to dive deep. She's going to go in and try to infiltrate this. Not sure how, but clearly the idea is stuck. Michaela runs into Peter in the morning. Simone joins them and gives him the schedule for the day. There's a photo shoot with Vanity Fair and all this stuff that he's not really interested in. He hands her a gift from Tokyo, from a chocolatier called Magpie. I've never heard of it. Pardon me if I said that wrong, but I think, yeah, they said Magpie in the show. And I'm not into chocolate. But he hands her this box of chocolates. She's immediately, Kiki, Michaela, is immediately taken with obsession by this box. And you don't know what she's looking at. Later on, we come to find out that she is suspicious of the box because she had another gift of chocolates flown in overnight from Tokyo so that she could side by side them and be able to determine, this box of chocolates did not come from Magpie in Tokyo because the grain on their ribbon is different. Like, what, lady? The grain on the gift box ribbon is different from wherever this box of chocolates is from. The one that's from Japan, from Tokyo directly, has a totally different ribbon grain. And Michaela's instantly able to pick up on that, which, as you can imagine, then makes her wonder, well, where did he get this? Where has he been? Why didn't he answer her text? Why was he late? Etc., etc. At least I think that's what they want us to be wondering about. So then we're taken back to see what's going on with Devin, still in jail. She's pulled out to meet up with Kiki. Kiki points out to her, like, you had some recent run-ins with the police. You know, she's obviously pulled her record or whatever. And she's like, you don't need another charge, trespassing, no less, to add to that. So she's trying to pressure her to go away because Simone has also made it very clear she wants Devin to go away. Obviously, the check did not work, but Devin does something smart. She appeals to, I want to say, the philanthropic side, but also probably the egotistical side of Michaela, and kind of begs her to become one of her acolytes. You know, she's like, I see what you've done for Simone, and I really want, you know, this kind of life, and that you're mentoring her, and maybe you could mentor me too, because I'm so lost, yada yada. And to my surprise, Kiki just laps it up. So there's definitely a bit of enjoying people blowing smoke up her butt. And I guess that's something billionaires do. Jose takes Devin back to the guest house at the Cliffs, and he says Michaela's gotten her some new clothes. I don't know how that happened all so quickly, but she's got her some new clothes. The clothing definitely looks like she completely liquidated a Lily Pulitzer near her, and Devin hates every single thread. She goes and finds them all getting ready for the Vanity Fair shoot, and that's where we also are treated to Kiki's little circle of friends. It's like 3 women who hang out with them while they're getting their makeup done and beauty treatments, etc., right, in the VIP room at the house. Devin also does something strangely messy. She meets a photographer from Vanity Fair. I mean, she strangely confides in him right away. Is like, hey, I got some dirt on Michaela. Are you interested? Here's the thing of why that's weird. I mean, I know Devin is not necessarily someone who is very worldly at that point, or what they've presented to us does not strike me as a worldly person. But what makes you think that the photographer who is here to, you know, take pictures of this fluff piece is going to out here in the open show interest in a hit piece on the very same subjects that he's come here to photograph. It was a strange choice. He obviously refuses to, and it's just also old news. This is tepid tea. Like, what happened to Jocelyn? Michaela's running a cult. I'm sure that kind of rumor has been flying around for years, so he doesn't bite. And then at some point, and then kind of while that's all happening, Simone and Kiki are summoned to a room where Peter and Jose are reviewing some security footage. Simone knows that she's cooked at this point. Peter tells her to wait outside or to go do something else so the three of them can review this footage. And it's revealed that Jose's been clocking her movements all along. Simone thinks she's been sneaking in and out of the house at night to go see Ethan and that everyone is none the wiser. Unfortunately for her, the security footage, she disables one camera that would show what direction she's going in. Little does she know Jose has a redundant camera also facing that direction that she doesn't know about and she never disables. So every day she does the same thing. She disables the same camera, which of course looks shady. So they put it together very easily that the only person whose house is in that direction is Ethan, and she's disabling the cameras, further indicating that she's doing something suspicious that she wouldn't want anyone to see. And so, yeah, I was like, Simone, rookie mistakes. But so Simone is overhearing this whole conversation. She's really upset because, of course, she did not want Kiki to know about the relationship, and she probably fears that there will be some kind of reprisal with Kiki learning that she is more or less steps away from joining her as an equal. Meanwhile, Devin is poking around the palatial estate, and she finds her way up to a tower, like as one does, I guess. And there she finds Peter. I guess there's no cameras up there, or if there are, I mean, it's Peter, so he owns the whole thing. Who's going to tell him what to do? So he's up there smoking, and he offers her to join him. And she kind of like starts to suck up to him in a way that was so on the nose. I was shocked that he didn't pick up right away and kind of show her the door. But I think he just kind of like, what's she talking about? Let's see where this is going. She starts calling him Big Cheese, and flattering him for his home and his achievements. We learn a few things about Peter, but Devin pushes too hard. She starts asking him about the kids and his wife, and immediately, of course, he's suspicious of her intentions with this line of questioning and kind of pieces out, leaves her in the room. We also see that after having had her secret revealed, Simone is pretty much like on the floor in some pantry crying, like having a full-blown panic attack. You can see she is not coping well. Everyone's looking for her. They're sort of, where's Simone? Where's Simone? Where's Simone? We know where Simone is. No one else does. So Devin, meanwhile, is snooping through Simone's room, and she realizes that Devin is not taking her medications because I guess her pill bottle is way too full. But just by seeing them, she's sure she's not taking them. And then she sees Jordan, who is Morgan, and that's his real name because Jordan was the fake name he gave when they were just flirting with each other at the bar. Morgan has her phone. She calls to him to get his attention so that she can get her phone back. That's when she clues him in on her whole plan of like what has ensued since she essentially scubaed off of his boat. So the event that's going on has obviously shifted to a funeral for Barnaby, the bird that flew through the window. Michaela's going to deliver a eulogy. It's going to take place in the forest. It's also beautiful and just over the top. This whole funeral for a bird. Devin finds her way into this funeral and gets to hear Michaela deliver a eulogy. And again, she has this spooky, culty way of speaking, and, she has everyone's rapt attention. They're just, hanging on her every word in such a way that, again, gives you very creepy vibes. After that, Michaela Kiki asks Ethan to take a walk with her. As a viewer, we know that she knows about Simone and Ethan. Ethan doesn't know that she knows about he and Simone. So I'm thinking they're going to hopefully clue us in as to what happens in that conversation. Jose walks up on Devin, who's spying on everything through the woods, and he tells her, like, you need to come here, and takes her to Simone, who's laying there, full-on breakdown, panic attack, whatever you want to call it. And Devin picks her up, and you can see her comforting her in a way that it was very natural for her. She's a nurturer. She's a caretaker. She takes a lot of pride, it seems, in being that person who takes care of her family members, which, from a psychological perspective, can have some pathology in it. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a caretaker as long as you are also caring for yourself and not doing constant martyrdom. But either way, you can see that this is not the first time that Devin has had to cradle Simone in this way and kind of scoop her up off of the floor and help her get back to her senses. And then that's the end of the episode. So what did you guys think? Honest thoughts. I actually really enjoyed it, and I'm intrigued enough to tune into episode 3. It could go one of two ways for me. If things will start to make a little more sense in terms of the choices Devin is making, I can't say that I'm going to be able to watch her totally bumble through all of this, the rest of this series. Like, some of her decisions, I know she's like, an impulsive type. She doesn't think. She just kind of shoots from the hip and says what she's thinking. And that's probably one of her character's strengths. But it's also a big weakness that I would like to see evolve in this show, to where she's learning how to be a little more savvy around these people. Blowing the whole thing with Peter, you had him, he was a captive audience, you were sharing a moment, and you couldn't be cool. You couldn't let the conversation just evolve a little bit, let it warm up a little bit before you hit him with like the crazy questions. I don't know. It was weird. Very weird, and not how I expected that to go. Also, I definitely want to, hopefully in episode 3, learn some more about Simone's past and why she's so skittish about it and doesn't want to talk about it. And it obviously created a lot of trauma for her, trauma that she's actively running from by seeking this environment and seeking validation from a group of people she has very little in common with. As limited series go, there's still a lot of meat left on the bone, so we'll see how it evolves. I am hopeful. I am interested. I am enjoying the beauty of the surroundings that they find themselves in. It's one of those, this show for me serves as one of those, like, let's pull the curtain back and peek into the lives of the ultra rich. Some of their interpersonal relationships, some of the impossibility of having relationships at that level of wealth, right? The interesting question for me always is, like, how do these people even form relationships? Because, if you're a billionaire, there's literally almost no one around you. Peter Kell walks into a room. Whether people like it or not, he's probably easily the most important man in almost every single situation he's in, be it his businesses or even in these social settings. When he's throwing parties at a house, showing up at a charity event, he probably bought the most expensive table there. So I'm always interested in shows that are willing to explore that. Sort of like, it's giving me a vibe right now and scratching a Succession itch. But obviously Succession was playing a long game and this is a limited series. So I think there's only so much depth we can give to each of the characters. So far, I can tell a lot about Kiki / Michaela. Sorry if I interchange a lot between those two, but about Michaela, I get the impression that she is here as the billionaire's wife, but she wasn't always here. Like, she wasn't born into money like Peter Kell was. What do you guys think of Ethan? Do you like him? Do you loathe him? I don't like him, but I very much understand a lot about his character, and I'll be interested to see how he responds to maybe Kiki confronting him regarding this relationship. If he stands by his woman or if he kind of throws her under the bus and writes it off as a big nothing. Super interested to hear your thoughts. This episode ran crazy long. Okay, future episodes will not be necessarily this long. We'll see. We'll tweak. We'll continue to evolve. But I appreciate you giving it a listen. And if you have made it to this point, friend, I need you to like, comment, subscribe / follow this podcast so we can continue this conversation. Okay? Thank you so much for listening to the Pretty Passionate Podcast, your and my favorite group chat. Until next time, have a great rest of your week. Talk soon. Bye.